Welcome to the Love What You Do podcast. I'm Kelly Dugan, former HR executive turned career coach, and I'm here each week sharing stories and strategies to help you love what you do. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I am so excited we have our guest here with us today, Cristen McQuillan. She is the Director of Creative Careers at the College of William & Mary. Cristen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I cannot wait to talk with you. So Cristen and I actually went to grad school at the same time, different years, but we were going at the same time. That's where we were able to connect. And I just love getting to talk to people about all things higher ed because it has one of my first career loves, obviously. So before we get into all of that good stuff, take us through what you do now and how you got to where you are now in your own career.
Sure. So I have been in higher ed now about 15 years, crazy enough. And I am the Director of Creative Careers at our Career Center, which we call the Office of Career Development and Professional Engagement. So basically what that means is I meet with students. So I have a lot of individual student advising appointments. So I do career advising and I also do career programming. So that includes alumni meetups or career treks or panels, or I do actually an art student headshot event, which is really cool. Just things that help them in their career development, either to engage with people in the field, to learn about careers that are in the creative space, which is my space, or to just kind of gain skills in that space. So that's pretty much what I do right now. Winding road to get here. Never plan on being in higher ed like most people who are in higher ed. So my undergrad degree was in advertising and PR. And I kind of thought about doing that, but really I started out wanting to be an event planner. I was originally a hospitality and tourism management major and switched that. So basically I actually started in corporate marketing. I got an internship at a corporate marketing agency in Michigan, which is where I'm from. And I moved that internship into a full-time role, which was great. So I spent about a year in corporate marketing. Insurance is not a super snazzy industry, as you may imagine. And so it wasn't my passion. So actually my husband and I moved to the East Coast. We wanted to be somewhere warmer and with less winter. That's not panning out this winter, but usually it's better. So we moved here and that's when I started looking for a job in event planning. And then I happened upon a job at William & Mary. And it was for an assistant director to plan special events in athletics. So it's basically athletics fundraising events. And I did that for a little less than a year. It was terribly paid and long hours, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about events. I did probably 20 plus events in 1 year. I did a LGPA Pro-Am. I did a Hall of Fame induction, a huge silent and live auction, a half marathon. I didn't run one. I planned one.
Yeah.
So a lot of really cool stuff. So I really hit the ground running. And then after that, I moved into kind of the back end of events. So I went into the Alumni Association here at William & Mary, which at the time was separate from the university. Now it's combined and a little bit different. But so I actually worked with renting out our alumni house. So for a lot of college campuses, they have an alumni house. And as a student, you're like, what is this for? You have no idea. And then as an alum, there's a lot of events held there. We did a lot of weddings, receptions, all that sort of stuff. And from there, I managed a student team who kind of ran the back end of events, and a couple of part-time people as well. And then I started working more in that alumni engagement space. I took over an alumni auction again somehow.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool.
Can't get away from those events.
Once people have learned you've planned an auction, they'll be like, oh yes. And I tell you what, that's like the hardest event to do in my opinion, just because there's so many moving pieces. But it was a really cool experience. So I planned an alumni auction, which was a fundraising event for the Alumni Association at the college. One in DC at the Ronald Reagan building and one in New York at the UN building. And they were really great learning experiences, lots of cool things. But during this time when I was at the Alumni Association, I started to think maybe higher ed could be for me. Obviously, I'd been working in it, but when I first started, I just didn't know. I'd had one corporate experience. I had like a year in higher ed, and I was like, I just don't know
Mhm.
where I fit. But the more I started working with that student team, the more I realized I really liked that part. And I liked the part where I felt like there was kind of a greater mission of it all, and I could see what that was every day
Yeah.
on campus. So that's when I actually went and got my master's at William and Mary. So I started
Mhm.
that, I think, in 2012 or something, and I finished it in 2015, which is a long time ago. And that's when we crossed paths.
Mhm.
And so I did that while working, but it was a really great opportunity to be able to do that. And after that, or right at the tail end of that, is when I moved into career services. So career services, I've been in now over 10 years, and I've been a few different roles, some on the employer engagement side, some on the career advising side. And I think it's been a great culmination of a lot of the things that I've done. There's an event planning component, which I have good experience in. There's a lot of that alumni engagement or student engagement pieces, the relationship building, and obviously just like the kind of career and self development piece. So I think it's all kind of worked out pretty well in how I got here. But of course, I would have never laid that path,
No,
right?
of course not. Which is, I always say, careers only make sense in reverse. When you're doing it, you're like, I have no idea where this is going, until all of a sudden you're like, wow, this wouldn't have happened if this didn't happen, and this and this and this. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so very true. And now it's kind of funny because the Alumni Association moved into advancement. And in 2021, the Career Center moved into advancement. And so now I'm like back.
Oh my gosh,
and, for
full
the,
circle.
and for those who don't know, advancement is kind of like the fundraising arm and that for a university. So we actually are housed underneath advancement, which is becoming a trend in career services nationally, but still not a lot of offices structured like that. So that was kind of a fun full circle.
It's so funny. So when you first were applying into that athletics events position, what were
Mhm.
some of the thoughts and feelings you were having? Because that was a real industry switch for you to break into higher ed. Like, did you feel like that this was kind of a long shot position to be applying for? Like, what was going through your head at that time?
Oh my gosh, so long ago. Let me think.
I know.
So at the time, first of all, we had moved here, and we moved here for my husband to take a teaching job. And I think the thing to keep in mind with like careers and career decisions is there's just so many reasons that people make different decisions, and everyone has a different life situation, a different financial situation. All those things are important, right? So at
Yeah.
the time, I'm thinking, I just need a job because we
Right.
moved here and I've not had a job for like 2 months, which is not a
Mhm.
long time, but still, the place I was working, they do have the insurance agency, they have other offices, but they didn't have one in Virginia. So that wasn't an
Mhm.
option. And so really I wanted to do event planning. I'd actually reached out to a bunch of like wedding planners locally just to say, hey, I was interested. And they were like, well, I don't have any staff, but you could come and volunteer. And that wasn't quite what I needed at the time. So this job I found, and like I said, the pay was listed pretty low, so I wasn't sure.
Mhm.
But I did get a call. I thought, you know what, I think this would be a really cool opportunity and maybe it'll be flexible. Like, who
Yeah.
knows? And so I really thought, hey, let's just try it because it would get me some event experience and maybe something different. It wasn't really the fact that it was at the university, it was more
Mhm.
just that it was an event planning job. And I
Yeah.
remember I went in and I met and she had me like do a bunch of like mock tests, which I thought was smart. She had me make an Excel spreadsheet. She had me like design a flyer really quick because I actually got to do a lot of design work in that job too. And so that was kind of fun. And I think just was a chance to show that off. So I did think like it was a long shot, but I also was just kind of like, it was new to the area, right? I didn't
Yeah.
know what was around. And it's so funny now just to think back like that I didn't know what I was doing, but it was like probably the perfect thing
It sounds
to be doing.
and it sounds so perfectly aligned to the transferable skills that you were bringing to the table.
Hmm.
And I know that's one thing. I don't know if you can relate to this with students, but I know for me, when I am talking with a lot of clients who are kind of at that midway point through their career, it can feel like this big chasm jump to go into a different world, right? Like, okay, I've only ever worked in insurance, or I've already only ever worked in the
Yeah.
financial industry. And um to try to, even though you're qualified for that position, to try to make that jump can be a little intimidating. And so that's why I love that about your story, that you were able to kind of break into this new space, because it was something that you were so perfectly qualified for in that role.
Yeah, it was I think one of the things that helped is when I worked at the marketing in the marketing job, I did a bunch of like expos, a lot, when you go to those big like home expos and there's
Oh
different
yeah.
tables. So I like manned a bunch of those and I had worked with our staff to do that. And I had done like a lot of design work because we did some advertising in local like publications. And so those skills I think really helped
Hmm.
get me the first job here, the events job. And I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head, like transferable skills. You just have to really highlight, like, this is what I could bring to the table. But either way, it's daunting, especially when you're jumping industries. And at that point, too, when you're in that early part where you don't have a lot of experience, there's pros and cons. The pro is that you don't have a lot of baggage you're carrying to, like, have to, explain why you're shifting. But
Yeah.
the negative is you just don't have a lot of experience to show. So
Yeah.
it can be tricky.
It can be totally tricky. So the other thing I love about your story, and is something that when I was doing my graduate assistantship in career services, this is a conversation that came up a lot, because when you're a student in college, your major is everything, right? Like you're like, these are the decisions that are going to affect the whole rest of my life. But in your story and in my story, we ended up doing things very different than what we went to school for initially. So how do you advise on that today when students are in kind of the very beginning of their career search, and all of these decisions feel really heavy? How do you talk to students about that?
Yes, that's an everyday conversation, especially now. We're in the spring semester, so a lot of seniors coming in. And I think you have to focus on what you can control a little bit. And so, with the major kind of question, I talk a lot about okay, let's say you're majoring in English. Let's talk about the skills that you're going to get from that. So, reading comprehension and analysis, maybe copy editing, obviously critical thinking, those sorts of things, but maybe you want to do marketing. So, what can you do to gain some real tangible skills that would help you in marketing? Is that through a club on campus where you could get kind of a marketing role where you could help promote things? We have a Alma Mater Productions is the name of a student org where they do a lot of events and bring in a lot of speakers, and there's like a TEDx that happens at the university that students plan. So there's so many ways to get experience, and that's what I talk to people about. Is like it's a whole package. So yes, it's what you studied and your skills you bring to the table from that, but that's one piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole piece. You have to make sure that you're also providing other avenues to gain skills that would be useful to you later. And that could be
Yeah.
volunteering, that could be a part-time job. I worked
Mhm.
as a server in college. I worked as a beverage cart driver at a golf course. And I mean, customer service, at least. I could bring those to the table and multitasking.
Yeah, you're not kidding. No. And just the having to balance all of those things at one time, like that in and of
Yeah.
itself is a skill. I
Oh,
love that.
absolutely.
I know. I feel like that's a piece of advice that I give as well to anybody who's looking to kind of make that shift and jump of like, stop waiting for permission to do it and find a way to do it.
Mhm.
Even if you're doing it for free for a little bit and for volunteering, whether it's for a faith community or a nonprofit or like something that you can do, to be able to just build that skill so you can say you've done it rather than waiting to ask if you can do it.
That's very true. And even like if it's design, maybe you want to do design work, go make something.
Yeah.
Make something, make a portfolio, put it out there. Ask if
Yeah.
people like that own small businesses need you to do work, need some work or something. I mean, absolutely. If you have to build your portfolio, you have to figure out ways to do that. So I
Yeah.
think I like that what you said about don't kind of wait for someone to give you permission to do it. Just go try to do it. I know that's daunting. It can be hard to figure out like, but how do I do that? And I don't have time. And I totally
Yeah.
get that. But at the same time, I think you get out what you put in, and I think it could be worth it in some
Mhm.
instances to take a little bit of your time and effort to do those things to gain those skills. You got to decide what makes sense for you in the moment and at the life stage that you're at. But if you
Mhm.
can, absolutely, because the piece of paper, your resume, it can't translate everything you can do, but it can give a good, idea of all the skills that you bring to the table. And it's varied. It's not just work, it's also other things.
Yeah, it really is. There's so much that you can convey outside of your major, your day-to-day position. Like,
Hmm.
you're such a multifaceted person, and, that's the kind of the art behind creating a resume is how do you bring all of those pieces in,
Yeah,
so that you can depict that so that people can pick up on it. But
exactly.
you mentioned portfolios, which kind of brought my mind to your specialty, which is around creative careers. So,
Hmm.
what do you love about getting to work specifically with that student population? Because I think like I've done a lot of work in the entertainment industry space and gotten to
Mm.
work with a lot of creatives. I find it to be so much fun. I'd love to know, like, what do you love about working with that population?
Oh, absolutely. It's so much fun. It's definitely my preferred population. I find, well, first of all, I just really like meeting with students and building relationships. I had two different students in here today who I've worked with multiple times, and I just love building that camaraderie and kind of, getting to that point of sort of trusting, that they trust what I say, and that's just really fun. And I love when they want to give me updates. That's just so fun. And the creative careers in particular, it's just fun things to talk about. It's about creating things or making things or thinking outside of the box or putting yourself out there. And I just think that's fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think the industries are really cool. I've gotten to lead a few different career tracks and I've gotten to go some really cool places. In the fall, we went to National Geographic's headquarters in DC, hosted by a fabulous alum. And like, I was soaking it all in as well, along with the students, because it's like you get to see how your favorite things that you like to watch are made, how they
Yeah,
do
that's
the
so cool.
sound, how they cut the video. I
Mhm.
mean, this is like footage taken out like in the wild that they
Yeah.
have to be like, okay, now we're making this digestible. And that's obviously one example, but I just feel like it's really interesting. And I also think that they bring a lot of energy to the table for the most
Mhm.
part. And and in some ways, there's a difference between me and a lot of the students I meet with. Not all the time, but like as in they tend to be sometimes more okay with risk because the creative population,
That's
it
very
tends to
true.
be a little less straightforward. It tends to be
Yeah.
a little less linear. And I really appreciate that and admire that about them, that they're willing to kind of put it out there a little bit and take that kind of risk.
Mhm. Yeah, that's and there's so much stereotype out there around creative careers, and I think people who are kind of knowing the stereotype that's out there and are still choosing to go for it have this like inherent flexibility about them, which is really fun. And I find one of the things that make people, it's like one of the common denominators of success of like people who are able to accept that failure might be part of it end up being more
Yeah.
successful in the long run. And it's just, it's one of those things. It's like frustrating and scary when you're a type A rule following person. But if you have that in you, it usually pays off.
This is so true. It's very true. And I mean, you must fall in that boat since you're a business owner, which is, obviously risky and wonderful in a lot of aspects. But yeah, I really appreciate that about the students I work with. And it's also a lot of real conversations I have to have, like, is this something you're okay with? You know
Yeah.
that this is not going to be, there's a lot of watching their peers who are doing things that are a little more straightforward or a little things are a
Mhm.
little bit more at an earlier timeline. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of concern sometimes about, my friend has a job and I don't have a job yet. And it's totally valid concern. But you also have
Mhm.
to remember you're in a different industry. Your
Yes.
timing is different. And that doesn't mean that something great isn't out there for you too. But
Mhm.
those are a lot of the conversations that I have. And I really appreciate that about people who are willing to just say, hey, this is what I love and this is what I'm good at and this is what I'm going to pursue,
Mhm.
kind of come heck or high water. So I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are you seeing in the creative space right now where like that's the most opportunity area or where you're seeing the most students kind of gravitating towards right now?
It always kind of changes year to year where students gravitate. I do think that so we're a smaller liberal arts university. We have not as many majors as some of your major universities, but we still have a lot of students who are interested in things like journalism, even though we don't have a journalism major. And we actually have a center on campus, the Charles Center, that's doing amazing work in the journalism space where they're bringing in all these speakers and opportunities to do journalism master classes and things like that, where they can learn about the craft and also be able to work on a story throughout the year and get that published. So I think that's growing here. I don't think that career field is growing, so maybe that's the negative sector of that. I definitely think it's hurting, especially at a local and state level. And a national level is not so bad, but yeah, that is a little bit of a difference. But there's always students interested in media and entertainment, and that definitely has exploded in the last few years. I think it's tricky because a lot of careers have ebbs and flows, and a lot of industries have ebbs and flows, and we've seen a lot of that happen lately with writer strikes and a lot of the upending in LA and Hollywood, and with media and things like that. But the thing that I've seen really as a growth opportunity is there's so much more opportunity for freelance opportunities, for gig work, for creating your own thing. That is huge. Their digital landscape is really big, and if you know how to do that well, and you know how to create content, and you know how to edit, and you know how to video produce and all that, I mean, you're really going to be in a better spot. So I do think those skills are growing, and I
Mm-hmm.
still think even with the challenges of AI and all that sort of stuff, just as a challenge to the creative spirit a little bit. I still
Yeah.
think that there is a big need for people who understand the strategy, understand how to communicate well,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think that's going away. And I
Yeah.
definitely think that our students are really good at like communications-based careers and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think on the topic of AI, I think time will tell how it really does integrate and be
Mhm.
used as a creative tool instead of as a replacement.
Yeah.
I have a good friend who's actually going to be coming on the podcast who his role is a creative technologist, which is
Okay.
a title that wouldn't even have existed a year ago, nonetheless 5 years
Right.
ago. But, like, really his whole job is how to create art with this hybrid of technology and just raw talent and bring that together,
Mm,
which is super cool. So it's
very
interesting
cool.
how there's, like, this disruption that's probably gonna happen in the creative space, but also these new opportunities that didn't even exist before. So we'll see what happens
That's
there.
very true.
Yeah.
That would be exciting to learn about. I'll have to listen to that one.
I know, yeah, we're working on timing. We'll make that one happen soon. Um, so what are some of the unique challenges? We touched on a few, kind of the lack of stability necessarily or having that same timeline. Are there any other challenges that you're seeing for this population in particular?
Um, Competition.
Mm,
Just if there are generally, it's been a tough landscape in general, especially for like entry level talent, I think,
mhm,
and not just in creative, but in other spaces. We've seen a lot of changes in that, and maybe hiring a little bit of less or being more hesitant to hire or things like that. So competition is always a challenge, and especially our students are very high achieving students. And so, you're competing with a bunch of other people who are high achieving like you, and that's difficult. And I think the network and connection piece is really important in every career, but particularly areas like media and entertainment and things like that, it continues to be very, very important. And so I think that's a challenge and an opportunity. I mean, William and Mary does that really well, and we have a huge alumni network, so that's really a positive. But just doing that is a challenge. And I think the other thing is being physically in some spaces where things are happening. um Sometimes that's just cost prohibitive. So like, if you want to be in LA, you used to be able to kind of make that work and get a really terrible place and get a PA gig and get a Starbucks gig and kind of make that
yeah,
work. And I'm not saying you can't do that now, but it's definitely harder.
yeah,
So I think those things, are challenges as well. You don't have to be physically like in a space, but certainly it can be very helpful. And particularly if you're trying to get on a film set, it's helpful to be where films are being made. So
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, we can. The digital connectivity only takes us so far, depending on
yeah,
what you're hoping to do.
Right.
Um, you mentioned networking and the alumni network. You know, how do you encourage students to connect with alumni to be able to grow their network in these early stages?
Um, yes, so I talk about this probably every day.
I can imagine.
So we yeah, so we have a few different ways. So as I mentioned, I do a lot of programming that features alumni, and so that's one way where we try to make it really easy, bring alumni to students. I'm doing an event this week in a couple of days with an alum who's a curator at a fine arts museum and trying to kind of help students make that connection. Like I said, we also do the career treks, which are kind of off-site and going into places where we have alumni. We also have an alumni lunch that we host during those. But on a broader scale, I mean, you have to be on LinkedIn, you have to be on those sorts of platforms. We have one in-house. A lot of universities are kind of making their own platform now through products like People Grove or Graduate. And we have one that we call One Network. And so it's basically like an in-house William and Mary LinkedIn. If you're not on
Very
it, you should
cool.
be on
I
it.
was just gonna say, I'm like, well, that's good to know. I know.
Um, so we do encourage that for sure. It's searchable, just like LinkedIn is searchable. You can actually search the things they were involved with while they're at William and Mary, which is cool. So you can look for
Very
someone who is
cool.
in your same a cappella club or, your sorority or something. And I think what's helpful when you're trying to make connections is kind of leading with that thing that you have in common, like a reason for someone to want to connect with you. And so it's like, hi, I'm a William and Mary student. I'm also was in Tridel and I see you were in Tridel and I'm interested in blah, and you do that. So I think making those connections is big. And I also think that LinkedIn cannot be ignored. We have to continue to use that as well. So I would say it's like a both situation. And, obviously students from any university or people from any university can use that. You can go through the Find Alumni tool. You can find people who are interested or who've worked in the industry you're interested in or who had the major that you had, and all that's really helpful. There's a lot of workarounds to like messaging and sending those notes out, but I talk about the importance of like making that first connection because many times that first connection will lead to another one.
Yeah,
So you might talk to
all the
somebody
time.
and say, "This was so great. Can you recommend anybody else I might talk to?" And then that kind of goes from there.
Mm. Oh, my favorite networking tool is use your network to expand your network. Just
Hmm.
that very question you just mentioned. Do you have anyone you think I should meet? Opens up so
Yes.
many doors. It's
Oh,
crazy. People love
absolutely.
helping people.
And that's the thing is if you have an affinity for something or, even just to be asked sometimes it's flattering. I mean,
Yeah,
yes, everyone doesn't always have time. Adults are busy, we have things going on, but generally if someone reaches out to you and asks you a question that's reasonable, for a small chat or for advice or something, like you're probably pretty likely to answer that. So I also say to students, the worst they can do is not respond or say no. Like it's not,
yeah,
it's not the end of the world. Yes, you've spent some time on it, but it's not the end of the world. It's not going to hurt your feelings and it's worth a shot.
yeah.
So people, like you said, they like to help others, especially others that are from a university that they really love
Mhm.
or, that have a common friend or something. So it's just worth a shot. The worst you're going
Yeah,
to get is a no.
exactly. 100%. So, on the flip side of that, for people who are alumni of universities out in the world right
Mhm.
now, what could they be doing to better leverage the alumni network, post collegiate? How they can connect with other alumni or give back to their own universities? What's some advice you have for them?
So many ways. So we talked a little bit about that platform. So we've branded One Network. A lot of universities have those as well. And so if you don't know if your university has one, go to their like alumni site and see if you can find it. Sign up. Most of the time, they're absolutely free, and you can make yourself searchable. In ours, you could say, kind of, there's a little raise hand feature that just says, I'm willing to help, and you can indicate what you're willing to help with. And so that might just be, I mean, might be connections, might be referrals, it might be just a conversation. And that is a really easy way to help pay it forward. And that would be, to a student, or maybe someone like me finds it who plans programs and says, hey, I saw you're willing to help, with students in journalism. Would you be willing to kind of do a career chat or something?
Mm.
So that's a really easy way. Connect with your university as well on LinkedIn. If there are regional networks, that's another really great way
That is a
to
great one.
connect. We have a lot of regional networks and as well. And so it's a way to get plugged in and kind of know what's going on. So I think there's a lot of ways in that. One could just be a conversation with a student. Another could just be sharing your story.
Mhm.
So sometimes we just want to know about alumni career stories that we can kind of share out there, because if you are a student now and you can see someone who was in your shoes who did the thing that you want to do, that just helps give you that hope and motivation that maybe you could do it too.
Mhm.
So that's something that potentially could be of interest. We have an alumni magazine, we have like a newsletter that goes out that features some alumni stories. And so you never know,
Yeah.
just kind of, send that out there. And certainly we'd always take financial support. So many universities are doing kind of a 1 day of giving now. That's a very popular, easy entry point into university giving. And a lot of people don't know that, like, if you give $1 to that, it's still very helpful, because many times it's about how many people give versus like the exact dollar amount, right? So that's something that you could definitely look for as well. And if you do that, you could earmark the gift, or you could just give it. Of course, we love it when it's just unrestricted and you can use it for what you need to use it for. But if you loved a particular program, or let's say you had an internship and you really want to give to the internship fund, so other students can have affordable internships, that's something you could earmark that for as well. And then I mentioned the kind of hosting and Trex thing, but we love it when alumni host us. And so many of them do this of their own free time. And it like adds a little bit to their plate, but they enjoy it so much. When they host us at sites, they get to meet students, they get to show off what they do. And that's been really fun. I've done several of those over the years, and it's always a great time. And I think alumni honestly get as much out of it as students.
Oh, I
So
I
um,
believe it.
that's
Mhm. It's kind of like getting to show off in like the best way of like, look, I was where you are and now I am
yeah,
here and like I'm so excited for you. I want you to be able to get here too, you know?
exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. So I mean, there's plenty of opportunities. You just have to either, get connected maybe on socials or through that kind of campus networking platform, or even through LinkedIn, and just reach out, or just say you're willing to help.
Mhm.
We obviously can't engage every single person that wants to do that, because there's only so many of us. But the ones that we do, we're so appreciative of just the time that they give, and most of what we're talking about is not a financial commitment; it's just a time commitment to
Mm.
either share their story or to talk with a student. And even if it's just one conversation with a student, that could be a really impactful conversation.
Yeah.
You never know what that does to a student's trajectory. So
Yeah.
I think it can be
Absolutely.
really valuable.
Wonderful. So, I have one more question for you, Kristen.
Okay.
If you had to give one piece of advice that you find yourself giving over and over, that if people took action on, it would give them kind of the biggest return on their investment. What is that piece of advice that you find yourself giving?
Oh boy. Okay. I have to think on that one. I mean, I would say the biggest advice I give in general is kind of stay in your zone of control. That's
Oh
that's maybe
gosh,
not crazy
please.
helpful, but it's this idea of you can worry about everything, the what ifs and the maybes and the, who knows what will happen. And it's like, you can control this. You can submit an application. You can reach out to somebody and ask a question. You can't control what happens after that. And try not to take that personally. Try not to take that, there's a million reasons that maybe you don't get a job or that a thing doesn't work out. And we've already said you learn a lot from those things and from the just taking the risk to put it out there. And it's worth a shot. And the other thing that I would say that I've kind of embraced in this time in my life is like, try to be in the room. It gets really hard, you're just like in your own space and you're in your own work and you're just busy. But like, if there's something going on where you can be in a room of professionals who are talking about things that you care about, or that you can learn something new, or that you can just put yourself out there and show your face, it's usually worth doing. So be in the room as much as you can.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Can we put that on a bumper sticker? Like that is
Right?
yeah, it's so important, and especially in the era that we're in now of just
Yeah.
technology is great. We're connecting right now virtually from Connecticut and Virginia. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said from being able to show up and just talk with people and see people, and so much opportunity is created from relationships, and in order for those
Hmm.
relationships to grow, you have to nurture them and be in the room to be able to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. That was my mantra the whole last year was like, be in the room, go to the thing. Like put like you can't always make it happen, but as much as you can, I think it's always been worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. I loved getting to catch up, and I think there's just so many amazing pieces of advice here for folks who are either early on in their career or even kind of at that midway point that can really take a lot out of this. So, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much. It was really fun and I really appreciate you reaching out. So, it was great. Thanks.
Thanks for joining me on today's episode. As always, if you're looking for coaching, support, or would like to submit a question, you can drop me an email at info@yourplaceatthetop.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review so this podcast can find its way to other amazing listeners just like you.